Hello, everyone. Welcome again to College Night 2022. We are hosting a team of panelists who are experts in their field and what they're doing. This night is about having questions, having time to ask things that might have changed during COVID or things that are on your mind as you look at college. Just so the panelists know, the people that were invited to this was all of upper adolescence, so our whole high school. So you may have questions from ninth graders versus 11th graders. What I ask for families is when they're typing and if it's a specific age, like if you have a ninth grader, it's really helpful to us as panelists to know what you're coming from, what you're asking for, and from what perspective. So as we start tonight, I am going to ask people to introduce themselves and either what college they are representing or the place that they will be attending in fall. As some of you can see, we have seniors joining us. That is because they have just recently gone through this process and they are the best people to ask because this information is constantly changing. And people like Abby, Shannon, and I try to adapt to that to the best as we can, but it is what I love about this job, it is never the same road twice. So as we continue, Shannon, can we start with you? And then maybe Abby will go to you and then our students. So we're on the left. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Shannon Cron. I'm one of the Senior Assistant Deans of Admissions at St. Olaf College. I've been there for almost 5 years now. And before that, I worked for College Possible in the Twin Cities. So I have a couple of different types of experiences, love working with you all at the many different stages of this process, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Hey y'all, my name is Abby, she, her pronouns. I am an assistant director somehow at the University of Minnesota Morris. So we are the only public liberal arts college in the state of Minnesota. And I am also personally a first generation college student. So I worked in the admissions office at Morris. I'm a Morris alum. And then they liked me and let me stay. So if you're not sure what you want to do, but you like working with people, admissions is a job. Higher ed is a job. You don't have to be a professor. And the best thing to do is just ask questions. So I'm so happy to be here.
My name is Chloe Gustafson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a student at Great River, a senior, and I am not totally sure on where I'm planning to go next year. I'm mostly just waiting on some decisions, but with what I know so far, I guess I would be planning to go to Washington University in St. Louis.
My name is Feneti Mohammed, she, her pronouns. I am also a senior at Great River, been going there since 7th grade. I applied to Brown University early decision, and I also got admitted there. So I'm committed to Brown University, class of 2026. So yeah.
Cassus, will you go next?
Yeah, I'm Cassus. I use any pronouns, and I'm leaning towards St. Olaf right now.
And again, I will introduce myself. My name is Teresa Hichens-Olson. I'm the Director of College Access at Great River School. I'm also a fellow from the Bush Foundation for Higher Education, and I am a proud parent of 2 Great River alumni. So I have been in that exact process that many of you are at as far as trying to support my kid to the best of my ability at Great River. So I love that I get to wear all those different hats. So as we begin tonight, Chloe, I'm gonna start with you. What do you think stood out about your application? And then we'll pass that to Feneti. And if you're an admissions officer, what stands out to you when you read applications? So Chloe, if you could start, that would be great.
Yeah, I would say what stood out most about my application was probably just my leadership skills and style and my community involvement. I'm super involved, especially with the Great River community, and just do a lot of different, I guess, clubs. So that for sure. And then also I've done some research and independent studies that I think just worked well for my application. So yeah.
In terms of my application, I would say also the same kind of community engagement, staying in touch with everybody in my community, checking in constantly, and being able to reflect on like my experience during this time of COVID, because it is a super rare experience that us students have in terms of like distance learning, quarantining, just like the academic setting during this time. And I feel like being able to reflect on those type of experiences is super important. I feel like that's one thing. I'm also a student of color and also just like part of many minority groups. So being able to also reflect on how that's impacted me and my education and stuff like that is very important. I feel like that's one of the things that stood out the most.
Cassius?
I'd say that definitely my passion showed through my college applications and in my extracurricular activities, like Chloe and Feneti were saying, with my student leadership engagement, in my social justice work outside of school, and then also in my college essay. Teresa really helped me balance like being able to show off like who I am, but also being able to authentically be myself. So not over exaggerating of like, oh, I'm like the greatest student, not the greatest student, but I did do really cool things. And I can say it in a voice that suits me. So the admissions counselor can get to know me and I can show off my stuff, you know?
Allemu is joining us. I don't know if he has access to his video, but Allemu, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear y'all.
Allemu, can you introduce yourself and where you're going?
I am Allemu Slattery. I'm currently attending University of Minnesota, class of 2025.
Allemu, can you tell us what you think stood out about your application that I bet feels so long ago to you?
It's been a minute. I would say probably just my personal essay and going back and always editing that before submission. I would say that was probably the most significant thing, part of my application.
Thank you. So Shannon, I'm going to make that a little bit more specific for you. What could those underclassmen be doing now to make their application really stand out to both you and Abby?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel like I agree with a lot of what was said about showing leadership, showing what you're passionate about. And I think using high school as a time to really explore and maybe hone some of what those passions are, and being thoughtful in that and not feeling like you need to join everything, right? Like I think what we look for in the app is like some sense of not necessarily direction, because you don't need to know exactly what you're doing, right? But I think that there can be a difference in seeing an app from somebody who it's like, okay, it's really clear to me what their passions are and how they've kind of paved that way, rather than like a whole litany of things for the sake of having that, you know? And I also think like, this is maybe if you want to be like extra prepared, but I cannot tell you how many times for many types of writing in my life, not only the college essay, but like maybe just have like a little journal, you know, where you just jot down things that are impactful for you, things that like really stick with you for some reason, because I think this was also said, but just that like being able to share a reflection of some sort in the essay that really shows us how you think and what matters to you and a point of growth. I feel like sometimes that can be hard to recall when you sit down to write, right? So I think having like something to go back and reference can be really an awesome tool.
I think, yeah, thank you. I will say it is very different depending on the college that you're interested in. And I really want you to take that in mind, because what Ivy League schools is different than what private schools are looking for, is different than what public schools are looking for. Even the difference between the Twin Cities University of Minnesota campus and what I at Morris am looking for is very different. At our school, we are small, and so I want to know you as a person. I want to know, and exactly like what you all have said, what you're passionate about, what your extracurriculars tell me about you. And I also want to make a point that, at least for us, you don't have to have the most or the best extracurriculars. If you work a job where you put in 10, 15, 20, 25 hours a week, that is an important part of who you are. And that still tells me that you're able to time manage and that you are in a position where you have had job experience, and there are a lot of things that you learn from a high school job. And so I don't want you to think that you have to be in every single activity, kind of like Shannon was saying. I would much rather get to know you rather than who you're pretending to be to get into a college, if that makes sense. So always keep in mind kind of your audience. Some schools are only looking for really, really good test scores and really, really good grades. Some are looking for what that essay includes. So just ask us if you're not sure.
I would also add that being authentic, like I think sometimes we as people shut doors for ourselves. We tell ourselves that we aren't good enough for certain things, or we feel like imposters when we do our jobs. And we talk a lot about that as senior, that imposter syndrome that happens when you go to college. But I really truly believe that there is no one path to learning. And so if you're someone who doesn't have a 4.0 or doesn't know what you want to do, or doesn't, maybe high school wasn't your time, and that's okay. I've seen students go on where college was their time, or I've seen students go on to have career that didn't require a college education and have an amazing life and sometimes make twice as much money as me. But, and that's okay, or not make money, like those things, like this enjoyment and how we find passion, I think should be the bigger conversation in college. So on that note, Cassus, can you talk a little bit about how you found what you're passionate about? Because you're a super passionate person, like your ninth grade self. What are the things that you did to kind of make that happen?
I'm trying to remember everything I did in ninth grade. I know that a lot of it was networking and talking to people around me and what they were doing. When I love conversing with people, I love seeing what their stories are. I love seeing what they're doing. And then be like, oh, that's cool. Can I do that? Or maybe I like the idea of what they're doing. Oh, I found out someone joined this program. I would like to join something like that, but not exactly like that. So using inspiration from those around me to help people, because that's what I want to do, is I want to help people. So that's how I found my passion, is trying new things inspired off of the people around me.
Chloe, will you and Feneti talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah, I would say that I guess CAS in 11th and 12th grade has been really helpful for me finding what I'm interested in, because you can kind of go out into the world and just like play with the world and experience it and see what makes you excited and what makes you want to learn more about whatever topic, not even academic related necessarily, and stuff like that. So I think experiences that often CAS provided for me fed a lot of my passions and kind of helped them grow. Otherwise, Great River is also really good if we can kind of choose which direction we want to take projects in school to go. And so you can dig in where you want, stuff like that. Yeah.
Going off of, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, Feneti, will you go next, please?
Yeah, going off of what Chloe was talking about, how Great River gives a lot of freedom in terms of like what projects you're allowed to do, and like in class, especially, I feel like ninth grade, in terms of like how I found my interest, mainly I'm planning to do political sciences and like social justice and stuff like that. And I feel like one of the main things was I did a cast at Great River based on this program we do every year based on iRace. We were planning iRace, and I was the keynote speaker that year, and I was talking about just like the equity and equality at Great River in terms of, how the students of color there are recognized or how they're not recognized, and how like our differences have to be, acknowledged and stuff like that. So I feel like that kind of was a gateway into me realizing that speaking up and using my voice actually has an impact on like the community that I'm from, and the fact that I'm from that community makes that impact like significantly much more stronger. So yeah, I feel like I don't know, it's just kind of like I enabled myself to use my voice, and then eventually that led to more and more things. And then also COVID, I couldn't have those face-to-face interactions. And like Cassus said, I love talking to people, and that like it's just not authentic through a screen. And I feel like, it's just I found a way to adapt. I feel like adapting was a really big skill that I learned. Being able to have that sympathetic connection with one another through a screen was also a skill that I built. So I feel like my passions have definitely developed to kind of adapt to the times that we're in as well.
Yeah, Cassius, will you?
I just wanted to add on, I don't remember what it was that Feneti said, but it reminded me that like not to like limit yourself. When I heard about an opportunity and I got excited about it, I didn't think, oh, I might not be able to get into it. No, they might not want me. Like who cares if you're excited about it? You should go for it, because if I didn't have that mindset, I wouldn't have done like half the things that I've done the past 5 years.
I agree. Allemu, are you still with us?
Sorry, yeah.
You're good, man. Allemu, will you talk about some of your activities that you did and how you developed that passion? Because you had a lot of activity stuff on your.
I mainly focused on community-based activities, and that was just something that I discovered within myself that came pretty easily. So I just kind of emphasized on that and decided to, do some fundraisers, work with like small organizations and support community-wise. But I would just say in terms of like doing activities, focus on things that you are good with or have a good understanding of and comfortable with. So, and then build off that.
Thank you. Moving on to Shannon and Abby, we're going to talk a little bit about how things have changed during COVID. And I know things have changed tons for me, and I'm sure on your end too. Can you talk a little bit about that, the struggles, or just, real talk here about how the last couple of years in COVID have been as far as admissions? Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I'll start. I feel like some of the things, I guess one thing I would start with that has not been a challenge, I think in a good way, is the move away from reliance on test scores, right? Like, I feel like this is such a big conversation. And that has been one of the most seamless things, I think, from my point of view. Like, I feel like it confirmed that, like, in these last 2 years being test optional, I like very rarely, if ever, read an application and think that I really wish that I had a test score when there wasn't one there. So I feel like I can say with confidence and experience and authenticity that it really is up to the student, at least at a school like St. Olaf, right? There's differences elsewhere, but that's been a really positive change, I think, and I'm excited about how widespread it is. I think this year compared to last year, reading applications, I think, was a little bit more difficult. I feel like there's just more time in the pandemic, right? And I feel like from my vantage point, it seemed like in many ways this past year was more difficult than, maybe not more difficult, right? But there was, I think, maybe a little bit more to uncover in the application. And so I feel like the balance between, like, I always want students to never feel like they need to disclose anything they don't want to. Like, it is your life, your story. You're not obligated to tell me as an admissions officer anything, but also there have been challenges in sometimes not feeling like I have all the information to really understand like what was going on a certain semester or the context behind a grade or something. And I recognize that tension of like how that can be difficult, but just to say that anything you are willing to share to advocate for yourself really goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like students at this point, because they've been in the pandemic for so long, they feel like it's like cliche to say, oh, the pandemic affected my grades. It's true. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is completely normal and completely okay to say. And so if that's your story, and your story is we were online, or I had to work, or my parents got sick, or whatever it was, that's okay, because it's affecting everybody. And I've met with a couple of students recently that were reluctant, or they felt like they needed more, like they needed a more of a reason. So to build on what Shannon was saying, yes, tell us as much as you're comfortable with, so we can get to know you better. I think a really big positive from the pandemic, and bear with me, is that we've normalized Zoom. And I know that it's boring and it's stinky sometimes, but I can also, if a student is like, oh, I'm really struggling with this part of my application, or something's not working, or, you know, can you look at this registration or something like that? We can just pop on Zoom and I can share my screen, or they can share their screen, and we can get it fixed really quickly. That, and also being able to connect with students that aren't close to Morris, Minnesota, which, you know, is 3 hours from the Twin Cities. So it's really nice to be able to see faces, even though it isn't quite as, you know, valuable as in person. I think it's still really awesome to see a face rather than just on the phone. Something that is really interesting at our university is our students didn't have years of people doing normal college search, if that makes sense. And so, you know, the typical, like when I started in admissions, or even when I went to school, it was, okay, think about visiting your junior year, apply for all the mailers that they send out. Okay, visit your senior year, make your decision, maybe visit, maybe have a phone call, do your scholarships. And we just had such a break in time where that wasn't normalized, because the people that were older than the people now didn't do those things, because you couldn't visit in person at a lot of different places, and you couldn't talk to somebody in the phone, and your scholarship interview was over Zoom. And so there's kind of a space in between the way our students used to do college and then the way they're kind of relearning how to do the college application process. And so we're learning along with them, because we knew what it used to be, but they probably didn't. So we're always happy to answer those questions and to kind of help move forward, because it is a really different time in some ways, and then in some ways some things have stayed the same. So
yeah, I would echo that, Abby. I think it's some things have stayed the same, and yay about equity and the ACT scores and moving that out of the way so that students who really are successful in college can do that even if they're not good testers. I would say we're going much faster than I have ever gone before. This year was an incredibly fast year. And I say that with, you know, if we're going to look at those numbers of early decision, and for those of you who do not know what early decision is, it is when you pick your top college and you legally commit to going to that college. And some colleges fill 60 to 70% of their freshman class with that early decision. And Feneti, somebody on the board who applied that early decision. And I would say that has never happened before. Students are coming to that much quicker. They're coming with those decisions much quicker. And I feel like we're going twice as fast as we did before the pandemic. And I'm definitely going faster than even last year. I thought last year would be the most difficult year with COVID and being fully, but this year has turned out, as far as admission, to be the most difficult of balancing in that. And I think that's just because we're all trying to figure out what this new world looks like. And this new world is constantly being built, and we don't know what to bring into the next world. And so I offer that to you for those 11th graders out there, spending time. And that's one of the reasons I'm opening things up much sooner this year than I have ever before, and including 9th graders in this talk, because I don't know what it will look 3 years from now. And so for you to start having those conversations in your household, but even with yourself, like, what brings me passion? Do I relax in math class? I mean, my daughter always used to joke that she did math in her head to make herself calm down. And I was like, who gave birth to you? You know, and we all have those places where we relax. I relax in a room full of teenagers, which my friends think is hilarious. But so look for those places where you relax, breathe deeper, and like Cassus said, bring in your passions, or stop saying no to yourself. Like, do the yes and I can do this, yes and, while still balancing, obviously, mental health. So we're going to talk a little bit, again, starting with some of these students right now. What do you wish that the caregivers or the adults in your life or the mentors understood about this college process? And then for admissions people, what do you wish that parents and caregivers and people understood in this terms of college process to support these students and people who are applying? So Chloe, real talk, what do you wish they all understood about this college process?
Well, I would say my parents, at least, and I feel like many parents are very prone to falling for like college myths or even making up their own myths about what they think is true about the college process. And so I was kind of always put in this middle of like, my parents were saying one thing and then Teresa was like, actually, no, like that's not the case at all. So I would say trust Teresa. She knows what she's doing. I promise. We love her. Like, trust Teresa and your students. They're the ones experiencing this right now. And also, I think that a big thing with parents is that they, or at least some parents or caregivers, like to show their students where like the fear is, I guess. So I feel like some caregivers will just like, I don't know, or not really exaggerate, but just point out like, oh, this is scary. Like, you know, what if you don't get in, stuff like that. Or like, I've heard so many students aren't getting in. And we know that, we feel that, we're feeling it firsthand, especially during that like time when you're waiting for decisions. So just, I would say in most situations, no need to point that out to us.
Feneti?
I would say from my end, I've always been building a bond with Teresa since middle school. So it's like my parents have also built a bond with Teresa. So that underlying trust was there. But I feel like also there was a lot of a heavy sense of independence that was, so it's kind of opposite from Chloe. Like there was a really big sense of independence where it's like my parents were like, oh yeah, Feneti's got it down. Like she's got Teresa on her team. So I feel like being able to balance like being engaged, but also not being balancing being too engaged and then not being engaged enough. So I feel like communicating with your kid, being like, do you need something, rather than asserting yourself and then like giving that support. Just kind of like making sure your kids' needs are being met by asking if they have needs to be met and stuff like that, rather than like either, you know, inserting yourself or just not asserting yourself at all. I feel like that's the main thing for me. Also, Teresa is a perfect team to have on your team. You also perfect person to have on your team. There's also your peers, the leaders in your community and stuff like that. Also understanding that Teresa is also human, in terms of she needs her space, she needs her time. And she always has your kid on her mind. There's never like a kid that in a grade like ever forgotten stuff. Somewhere on her radar, they're always there at the front of her noggin. So, you know, just to kind of understand that she is human, she will get to it. But yeah, I feel like those are the main things. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Cassus, do you have anything to add? Adults, teachers, what do you wish they knew?
I have so many things to say, but I will try and like keep it narrowed. Definitely emphasizing what Feneti said. Trust Teresa. There's not a single person in my grade that I can think of that's like, oh, I hate Teresa. We all love Teresa. She helps us get into college. She helps us not have to pay as much, you know, for like college debt and stuff. She's amazing. She will help you, so trust her. And don't put too much pressure on her. For like the parents, I have some friends who are like, yeah, my parents email Teresa like 3 times a day. Don't do that. I know that you want to ask questions, but don't do that. Teresa's crazy busy. I also wish that people understood that like you don't have to know everything. Life is a journey. It's, you know, like everything should not be laid out. You should be able to explore different things. You should be able to change your mind. You should be able to just discover new things. You should not know everything. And if you do, like, good for you, but it should not be an expectation for you to know everything that you want, especially in a college. None of us have gone to college. We're high schoolers. We don't know like what we want in a college just yet. So it's going to take time for us to get to know ourselves and what we're going to need in our future. It's also okay to ask like stupid questions. Teresa reminded me of that a couple months ago when I was in her office. She was like, I know this is hard for you, you know, like whatever questions you have, you can ask, even if you think they're stupid. Those are like the most important ones. And I really want to emphasize that. Like I will ask questions that I'm like, I feel like I should know this. Well, I will know when I ask the question. And yeah, and the last thing is that kind of what Shannon and Abby were saying earlier, but do what you want. Do things that make you passionate. Don't put pressure on your kids to do things just because it's going to look good on college applications. You know, it's not really worth the time then, I don't think.
Thank you, everyone. That was great. Shannon, can we talk a little bit about students at our school have the choices between an IB diploma, doing IB credit, or doing PSEO? Can you talk a little bit about your preferences, real talk, and Abby, your preferences too, and how that kind of goes into your decision?
Definitely. So I think that kind of the highest level answer is that most often for us, any rigor is good rigor. So like whether you're taking IB or PSEO, both of those things are going to look really good on your transcript. If you're doing full IB, it's going to look great. If that isn't the right fit for you and you're doing some of the rigorous courses, but not all of your classes are a rigorous option, that in the context of the rest of your application can also look awesome. I think my like slightly lower level approach is, I think, you know, I've worked with Great River now for, this is my 5th year, and I do get the sense of how amazing the IB program is, right? So it's not that I have any negative feelings towards PSCO, but I feel like I have built this knowledge, right, about how good the IB program is. And if you have it in you to do full IB, like, which I know like you do, right? That looks incredible. And it really does elevate the application. So of course, like great applicants come in many different shapes and sizes, but that's kind of my leading advice.
Abby?
Yeah, so I'm going to tie a little bit about what we wish supporters knew, and talking about these advanced level classes. For us at the University of Minnesota Morris, doesn't matter to me. Whatever kind of advanced level classes you want to take, but again, do something that's interesting to you. Don't be like, oh my gosh, well, I have to take college algebra because somebody so-and-so said so. You don't even know if it's going to transfer. You don't even know if there's a limit on how many classes can come in. You don't even know if you want to be in math. So why would you take algebra if you don't want to be in math? So I think I would say, do whatever you want. Just dangerous to tell teenagers, I know. But don't put so much pressure on yourself. I would rather see really good grades in normal classes than see you take a full IB diploma and get D's and F's in those classes. I want you to be able to be successful, and I want you to have that time for job, for friends, for those passions that you have. And if that means not taking that full IB diploma, if that means not doing 2 full years of PSEO, that's okay. I would much rather see you do well in normal classes, which are hard to begin with. Like, let's be real. I don't want you to feel like I have to get this IB diploma done because it's going to knock off time when I go to college and it's going to save me money. I think that there's a really, really strong misconception that if I did 2 years of PSEO, I'm only going to have to go to college for 2 years. It doesn't usually work like that. Like if you're like a biology student at Morris, a lot of people want to be pre-med, right? Or pre-health. Those classes are very sequential, and you might just have a lot of spare time in your schedule, but you still have to take 3 to 4 years. So I really want you guys to, again, ask questions, even especially those of you that are like 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. Talk to the colleges that you're interested in or your local colleges just to kind of get a feel and see how much more value are the IB diploma, our PSEO classes, our college in the schools, our AP classes, how much more value are they going to add to what this college is looking for? Some colleges, it's super important. Some colleges, not so much. And that is the hard part about applying to colleges. But seriously, I get paid to answer your questions, so please don't hesitate to ask.
I would also I want to clarify a couple things. One, know your high school requirements. At Great River, we need math. So sorry, you guys, you'll all have to take math. And the IB classes that are offered like, I like what you said about PSEO, because a lot of the times parents think that'll save money. It doesn't. I mean, that's like a big, huge urban myth, because if you counted for high school credit, it's not going to count for college credit a majority of the time. So really researching that. Also, you guys learn to use your supports. I think one of the strongest things at Great River is our support. And you hear these students talk about names, and not just me, but Zeth and other people in student support, and using your IEPs or 504s, learning how to use that in high school. That's what is important to be practicing. And sometimes I think as adults, we try to lower the bar or take things off your plate to make life easy, and then we don't teach you how to use those muscles. And it's just like, like as old people say, it's like riding a bike, but it honestly is true. We don't know how to be adults unless we practice being adults. We don't know how to take care of our mental health unless we practice taking care of our mental health. We don't know how to balance academics with work and job and social life unless we balance. And that's what I want you to do at GRS. I want you, when you fall, to ask for support, to come to those offices and student support and say, hey, this was really hard and I need help trying to figure out chem this year. Those are things that I want you to be able to do. So that, on that note, Chloe, could you talk about a little bit about how you use support at GRS and things you maybe wish you had used more or not enough, and not just me, but other things? I mean, I love the Teresa hour, but I want to talk about it.
Yeah, obviously Teresa, we love Teresa. And then also a big thing for me was just connecting with my guides and really creating those super strong relationships with each guide. And that led me to so many opportunities, like an independent study with one of my guides. Like that can give you so many things, including just, I don't know, it's just good to have good relationships with your guides and any adult in your life, especially who's going to be a support during this time that is stressful and hard. I would also say that the relationships that I built with guides and Teresa and Seth and everyone helped me get accommodations on stuff. I had issues where I got a bunch of concussions and just couldn't do the full workload, and admin was not fully helpful on that. So having those relationships with guides really helped just push me through the tough times. So yeah, just my guides mostly, and Teresa. We love Teresa.
Feneti?
I would personally say, we're talking about like support systems, right?
Yeah.
I would say, connections with guides and kind of like the resources that are there. Talking to Seth, who is the social worker, also Teresa, also just like, connecting with your guides. For example, I had an extended essay to write. I did the full IB. I had the extended essay to write. It was a 4,000 word essay. It was super rigorous. I was writing about the mass incarceration of women and how that affects childcare and so on and so forth. And because of COVID, didn't have that ability to kind of connect with my guides. And because I was so used to face-to-face communication, I was just so adamant on being like, no Zoom, I hate Zoom. I don't want to connect with anybody over screen. So when I came back to school, I had also lost my skill to connect to people face-to-face. So it led to me missing deadlines. But then also, once I caught myself in those situations, I was like, I do need to communicate. I do need to build my bonds. So then through that experience, I was able to, build that connection and build that skill. Also, just like knowing that people are there for you, just like, because teachers are always willing to understand if it's just a simple matter of going to office hours or emailing them, G-chatting, be like, I need help. Being able to say that statement, I need help, will take you so far. And it's like, it's one of those things, it's like, it might be your pride, it might be your ego, but like being able to say, I need help, and coming forward to somebody and like allowing them to help you will take you so far, like not even academically, but just like in life and everything, literally. So yeah, I feel like that's what it would be.
I would also say peer supports though too, and even like your parents, like starting those just open conversations about life and even just your fears for your future with your parents is really important and has just been a good thing to have on my plate, I guess. And then also, yeah, peers, like I said, those are the people who are right beside you. And depending on how long you've been at Great River, have been for a while and hopefully will be through the future. And they're experiencing, I mean, at least to some extent, a very close to the same, I guess, process that you're experiencing right now. And those stresses, like you go through it as a class.
Yeah.
So just have it like peers are there for you. We understand everything like that. Yeah.
Cassius, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely talking and being vulnerable. Like it can be really hard, especially at a place like school. Like last thing I want to do is be vulnerable at school. I have to be there for like 8 hours Monday through Friday for the majority of the years. I don't want to be vulnerable. Yet it's also really helpful because when I'm vulnerable, I can talk to like Seth, our social worker, and be like, like my mental health is really not good. My family life, it's really not good. And he's able to, and because I talked to him and because I opened up to him, he knows how to help me. Same goes for Teresa. I started building I unknowingly helped myself. Thank God. But I created a relationship with Teresa really early on in my Great River career. And because of that, and because of the open and vulnerable discussions that I've had with her, she knows me really well. So when we were doing my college application and we were doing my college essay, she knew exactly how to help me because she knew me so well, because I was vulnerable. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Thank you. Shannon, one of the questions that we've had in the question answer, again, I'm just going to remind parents and students if they have something specific they want to ask, they can type it in there. Just a time check that we have about 15 more minutes. But one of the questions that we had is, what if you don't know what you want to do in the future? And I'm a big believer that even at 55, I have no idea what I want to do in the future. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, but can you talk about a little bit what St. Olaf, how that helps develop some of those passions, or should a student know what they want to do in the future when they apply to college and all those things?
Yeah, this is actually what I was thinking about saying to what I wish caregivers knew, was that I think this goes for many paths at many schools, but particularly at St. Olaf, particularly at small liberal arts colleges. I think it is like almost celebrated to come in not knowing, or at least being open-minded, right? Like there is such a emphasis on exploration and that it's great that you have these passions, but also like, here's this whole mix of things that maybe you haven't had exposure to in high school or you haven't tried before. So why not give yourself the space to explore that? The two things that I think really help it in the environment at St. Olaf are, one, just the time being really carved out. So you don't have to declare your major until spring of your sophomore year. Using that time to explore does not put you behind in terms of graduating on time. I think that's a concern sometimes, right? Is that if I go in and I explore, am I just like then putting myself behind? And at St. Olaf, not the case. Like you have to explore to graduate through your general education requirements. So you may as well use those. The other big piece is, I think, kind of related to the previous discussion about using your support and using your advisor in college, for example, or professors or any of the other adults that you might see or meet, especially in your first year. I feel like there is a lot set up to help facilitate that self-reflection of like, what have I been taking? What do I like? What are maybe like 10 careers I want to consider? And I think that with that, the last thing I'll say is I think there are some careers, right, that require more prep, right? Like if you want to be a doctor, you do the pre-med track. But I felt really comforted getting to college, realizing like, maybe I only actually know like 30% of the jobs that exist in the world right now. And there are like so many other ones out there. So especially if you are like kind of more on my train there, in that you don't have a super kind of like direct track career, I think try to view it in an abundance type of way. Like there's so much, it's kind of overwhelming having so many options, but it's also a really cool way to find what's truly going to make you happy, and that like that continues through your life. Like I think Teresa's exactly right. And like, I feel like you are also set up to keep kind of like exploring, which I think is a phenomenal life skill and serves people well to kind of like be always thinking about what's making them feel fulfilled and motivated.
Thank you. My last formal question is, what would you, and I'll start with Cassus. What, like, ways that you decrease debt? You know how I feel about debt and student debt. Like, are there scholarships you applied for? Was there a way you looked at applying for colleges? How did you kind of think about decreasing your student debt? Or was that something you even thought about, Cassus?
That was definitely something I thought about. For a little bit last year, I genuinely didn't think I would be able to go to college because I didn't have parents to financially support me. So I didn't think that was an option. And so yeah, I'd say that a lot of looking into the college themselves, do they give out merit scholarships? If so, would you qualify for any of them? I'm a queer student of color. There are tons of scholarships out there for that. Look up, like, like I'm Asian, so I would say Asian Pacific Islander, whatever, scholarships, scholarships for non-binary teens, scholarships for students of color, scholarships for student leaders in their community, tons of scholarships. Look it up. Like, I had a hard time finding scholarships because I didn't know what to search for, but just throw out a ball and hope that it lands somewhere in the field, because there are lots of scholarships out there. Also, Teresa is a great help. A great help. So yeah, again, use your resources, connect with other people. At my job, they can connect you to so many different people who can give scholarships. So talk to people, figure out if people know different resources, really use your network. Even if you don't think you have a network, you have a network, especially if you're at Great River. Everyone knows something that can help you.
Chloe, could you talk about when you started applying for scholarships and from your end? Thank you, Cassus. That was a great answer. But Chloe, could you go next and talk about that part?
Honestly, not as soon as anyone, including myself or Teresa or my parents, would have liked me to. So I think I applied to the first scholarship 2 weeks ago, which is so bad. Don't do that. Like, really don't do that. And I guess I applied to like school specific ones earlier. So there's that, but I was kind of forced to do those earlier. So I really only started thinking about it, or not thinking about it. It's kind of been on my radar through the whole thing of like, no, I'm going to be like better than my sister. I'm going to apply to so many so early. Like, I'm going to be so good. And then I didn't. So please take like action steps to do it rather than just say, I'm going to do it. After I finish my application, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Actually do it. So yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Feneti, will you talk about that too?
Yeah. I didn't start 2 weeks ago, but it definitely wasn't as soon as I should have started. I did early decision. So it's like I submitted my application, what was it, November 1st, which is significantly earlier. I found out December 16th. And I feel like that month and a half of just like, what is going to be the answer? I was just so stressed out. So it's like anything college related was just so off my radar. And I feel like that's something I would advise all my siblings and like the entire rest of the world that's applying to college after me to not do. Just kind of don't be a sitting duck. Apply for applications, for scholarship applications. But yeah, I feel like also networking is very important in terms of like being able, there's a bunch of websites that are all over the internet. There's like, you can make a quick account with your Google or like your email, and then throw in like what you identify as and like some notifiers and stuff like that. And it'll bring out hundreds and hundreds of scholarships that you can just like apply for super easily. So I feel like that's a good.
And the board outside my office, you guys, nobody
Yes.
It's so good about my scholarship board. So there's a big board outside my office making a scholarship map too. If you're a junior talking to seniors, especially seniors who might share the same background as you or the same interests, what scholarships did you apply for? Which ones do you wish you had applied for? Making a map or a calendar about scholarships. I think as much as you can eliminate that student debt, 80% of scholarships sit on the table without being applied for. So I really need you to get that money out of those foundations and get it to the schools. You guys all deserve that. We have about 5 more minutes. We have 2 questions in the chat, 3 now. One of the things that I was asked, and Abby, maybe you can talk about this from your own experience. How should a student narrow down the schools they are applying to, programs and aid, etc.? Ab, if you could answer that.
Me, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's a great question. If you have the opportunity to visit, which I think probably anyone that's been able to visit their college campus, which is difficult, I absolutely understand that. That's where it's won and lost. And so if you have the opportunity to visit, great. If not, at least try to get on the phone with someone from that school. Admissions reps are truly a rep of the college. And so if you want to talk about your major, if you want to walk through bullet point by bullet point of your financial aid package, I am thrilled to do that. Like, that would make me so excited if somebody called me and said, "Can you explain my financial aid package to me?" Yes, that's my job. And I know it, and I put in a lot of work to understand it, and I want to help you understand it too. Something to add to helping afford college, try not to notice where there are gimmicks. There are colleges, and all colleges are businesses. And so sometimes they will say, you get this humongous scholarship, but you have to maintain a 3.5 GPA to get it every year. Or we're going to give you $10,000 your first year and only 100 your next years. So make sure that you're asking those questions, not just what is my package going to look like my first year, but what is my financial aid going to look like down the road? Are there scholarships that I can apply for as a sophomore? And so on and so forth. Are there specific, there are grants that are specific for those that want to go into teaching. So don't hesitate to ask those questions. And like Cassus said earlier, no dumb questions. I promise you, you don't know what you don't know. It's my favorite saying, and it sounds really silly, but you couldn't have done any better if you didn't ask. And so don't hesitate to ask any admissions office. You can email their general email. You can find someone who's maybe recruiting like your area, or just pick a random person. Honestly, that works really good sometimes too on their website, and just say, "Hey, I have questions. Can we do a Zoom? Can I come in person? Can we meet on the phone?" Like, whatever, just ask any of those questions. If you want to know if the pizza is good on Fridays, if you want to know like how do I do my laundry, any questions, each college might do things a little bit differently. And so if you can really figure out what's important, and you can feel yourself and envision yourself at that school with those people, that's going to solve everything. So, and know that nothing's permanent. I was paralyzed when I was applying to colleges because I was a first-gen low-income single parent household, and I was scared, what if I made the wrong decision? Nothing is permanent. And so you can change your mind, you can change your major, you can change your school. It's okay, I promise. And we're here to help you.
I would just add to that, I think this year we had about 68 colleges come to Great River, either virtually or in person. And that's something that I spent a lot of time working on. One, because I am also a first generation student, and my family didn't have the income to fly me halfway across the country whenever I found a college that interests me. On that end, if you're visiting, even in 9th grade, walking around a college campus, if you're, in Northfield, checking out a festival or going to an apple orchard, even walking or driving through St. Olaf is going to give you a feeling. And so it may not be a formal tour, but the more exposure you allow yourself, or the more kind of feelings you allow yourself to have, when you come to me then in 11th grade and say, I really liked that there was woods everywhere, or I really hated that there were woods everywhere, or I really like the feeling of this urban campus, or I really want a bigger student body than this. Those things are helpful to narrowing down. And again, your job when you're applying in 12th grade, and there was a question about when do you start applying, that depends on the schools. So early decision, Feneti talked about that November 1st, right? Most those deadlines are November 1st, November 15th, December 1st, December 15th, then December 30th, then January 1st, and then January 15th. So, and everywhere in between there, but generally those are the big deadline days. But the more you come with information or allow yourself to kind of have a college vocabulary, even saying hi to me in the halls and knowing where my office is, that is helpful. Those things Cassus talked about in 9th grade, building those relationships are really super, super important. All right, I'm gonna just open it up for one more minute, but I think we are good. There was a question about 11th graders, when they should hear from you to meet. Every 11th grader is getting an email to personally meet with me. There are 75 of you and one of me. So that is coming in the order of ascension. So I am doing my best to meet with every single person in the next month. So they should be just checking their email. So that's my job, and I'm doing it now. Cassus, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had some stuff that I wanted to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just some like general advice, stuff that I wish I knew. I would not have taken the ACT. I'm not saying don't do it, but to me, I don't think it reflected who I was as a student and as a person. I didn't need it. Again, like I'm not saying don't do it, but to me, it wasn't really necessary. I only submitted it to one school, and that was because they required it. But the other colleges that I applied to, ACT is really not important to me. I see no value in it and how it reflects me as a person, so I didn't add it. Also, what Feneti was saying, she was like paralyzed with like waiting. She was a sitting duck. I am really glad with the mindset that I had about college. I'm very much like, wherever I'm meant to go, I'm gonna go. Whoever is going to give me the most financial aid, that's most likely where I should go, right? So I'm glad that I didn't like tear my head in half having a bunch of anxiety about college. Of course, thinking about stuff, and thoroughly reflecting about like what I want is important, but I'm not going to obsess over it because that is going to hurt me more than it's going to benefit me. Also, admissions counselors are human, which means you can talk to them. I talked to Shannon. I had a meeting with Shannon. It was a wonderful conversation. I loved it. I'm glad I had it. It is what helped me decide that I was going to apply to St. Olaf, which led me to getting a full ride to St. Olaf. Crazy. And if I hadn't had that conversation with Shannon, that might not have happened. So like put yourself out there, connect with admissions counselors. I talked to as many professors and students as I could. When I toured around colleges, I didn't take the official tour. I just walked around and found random people to talk to. And they told me about their experiences, and it was real and it was honest and it was really helpful. Yeah, that's what I got.
Thanks, Cassus. Oh, we're a little bit over time. Just want to thank you all for coming. Shannon, Abby, Chloe, Feneti, Cassus, and Allemu up there. Thank you so much. And Adam, thank you for helping with the tech stuff in the back. This is the last of our panels, you guys. This is my third one on a Monday, so I'm really excited to be done. But please know that you can email me at any time, and I will stick around. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A. But again, thank you all for being here. Go outside, it's warm. Have a good night.